Hey, everybody, welcome to the show. I'm Ricky Belt. This is Straight Up. I've got Jared, my co host, and we're talking to Will Witt today. Will, welcome on.
Thanks so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, well, like I said, thanks for coming on. Let's give everyone a brief introduction who, may not know you.
In case you don't know who I am, my name is Will Witt. I used to work for PragerU for the last 5 years. I did Man on the Street. I directed a couple of short documentaries. I spoke around the world talking about various different topics. National best-selling author of the book How to Win Friends and Influence Enemies. And now I live in the state of Florida. I live in Tampa, and I'm the editor-in-chief and CEO of the Florida Standard, which is a political news organization here that puts out what's actually going on here in the state of Florida.
That's awesome. And you've got a new book coming out in September, right?
Yes, the new book is called Do Not Comply.
Okay, what you tell us a little bit about it, or is that all secret right now?
No, I would love to discuss this. Yes, I'm very excited about it. I loved my first book. I loved what I was able to do with giving people the tools to have discussions and conversations with people who they might not agree with politically or culturally. But I think that this next book really dives into a lot more of the problems that are really eroding America at its core. So about half of the book is more, there's a chapter list, as you guys can see on my social media. I list out all the chapters on there. But about the first half is more political and talks about real concrete issues and the elites and the bureaucracy that are in this country holding us hostage, versus the second half, which I think is a little bit more philosophical, political philosophy, religious, those kind of things. And so I'm very excited for the book because I think that it actually gives people actual tools and uses of their brain power and the way that they can actually use their character to beat the issues that we're seeing in this country. It's not just government policy. It's how people can actually change themselves to be better people, to combat the leftism, the evil, and the bureaucracy that we're seeing in this country today.
Yeah. What are some of those issues that you think are eroding America at the moment?
Well, number one is definitely godlessness. That's what I have as the second to last chapter in the book called God Save America. And it's how Americans, and especially Christians who are kind of weak Christians in America, can actually use the gospel and use their faith to combat all of the things that we're seeing right now. One of the most important things that I think I talk about in the book is where I talk about how everyone's always asking about, when is politics going to change? When is Joe Biden going to change? We just had the State of the Union a little bit ago. When are all these things going to change? But no one's ever really asking themselves, looking in the mirror and saying, when will I change? And I think that that's a huge missed opportunity for people, because I don't think people really want to look at themselves for how they can actually be better people, how they can actually fix things themselves. Instead, they're always kind of looking for someone else to fix it. They're looking for reactions on social media, and they're not doing the hard work to make actually a country of good people. If you have a country of good people, then you're not going to be having the problems that we're having now. Obviously, we don't live in a utopia. Not everyone is going to always be good. We are born in sin, and that's how it is. But when you have a coalition, a community, a family, an individual who is good, who puts truth, beauty, and goodness above all else, then you really can start to make a lot of changes in America. Because imagine if you had all these people, we're obviously Republicans. I'm obviously a Republican, and despite me not agreeing with a lot of what Republicans do these days, but imagine if you had this group of people who were, quote unquote Republicans or conservative, who instead of putting politics first or money or vanity or any of these things, they put goodness first. I think you could do so much in this country if people really looked at the moral foundations of what this country is based on, and less so maybe about the political foundations.
Yeah, we're definitely losing a lot of the moral, that's for sure. I think anyone who follows you probably knows that during the pandemic you came to God, right? So did that influence the book in any way?
Yes, very much so. Yeah. So my faith, a lot of what I did when I first started out in politics about 6-7 years ago, starting to work with Turning Point USA and other nonprofits, and then eventually PragerU, being completely honest, and I talk about this in the book, I think I did a lot of things for my own vanity. I think that I talked about a lot of issues. I think I made a lot of videos. I think I did things because I thought that it was going to bring me some sort of pleasurable fame from being this person in the spotlight, talking about conservative values, talking about politics, talking about republicanism and how bad the Democrats are. Right? I got a lot of I guess you could say pseudo confidence from having people look at what I was doing and like it. And once I became a Christian, and especially now this last year with a lot of the tumultuous nature of what I've been up to, moving to Florida and personal matters and all sorts of things, which I talk about in the book, which I won't get too into here. But all of these things compound into the fact that it's like the faith needs to come before the politics, and God needs to come before yourself. And realizing all of those things and kind of putting my own, I guess, my own social status on the backseat and saying I want to promote God and these types of values first has really been the driver behind a lot of what I've been doing recently. I mean, in a lot of things, I've posted a lot less videos. I've talked about less of the political issues. Like I didn't say anything about the State of the Union that just happened because a lot of this stuff is just theater when it comes to the grander message of what's actually going on and how I think people can actually adapt to a changing America that is unrecognizable from the America that was just present years ago or generations ago. There are bigger issues at hand. And I think people get distracted by all of this conservative influencer stuff and the Republican stuff and Joe Biden, when really there's a battle for our souls taking place right now in the battleground of this country. And if we're not ready for that war, I think we really will lose the West. I think America and the West will completely break down and completely fall because we don't have a good people who put God first. And so that's my main intention of writing this book, is to build people on that precipice.
Yeah, it's like people trying to find political solutions to spiritual issues.
Yeah, exactly. You won't find that. Definitely not. No, especially looking at the Republican Party or anything. Definitely not.
A lot of the things that this country was founded on was based off of those Christian ideals, those morals that you talk about. So I think you're absolutely right when you say that people need to put goodness and kindness and godliness more on the forefront of a lot of these issues, where they just want to say, oh, well, it's Joe Biden, he's ruining this and he's ruining that, rather than people looking inward and introspectively and seeing what they can do and how they can better practice their morals and their faith to improve the country. So I think that's going to be a very exciting section of that book to read for sure. I'm wondering maybe if there's because it sounds like you're pretty excited about that portion of the book, if there was maybe some other topics you touched on in that book that you're pretty excited to share with.
Yes, thank you. And in terms of that, yes, this country was definitely founded on Christian values. There's no doubt about it. And it's even though the thing that's different from America versus a country like France, which they both had their revolutions similarly at the same time, is that the Enlightenment ideals of liberty and freedom and justice, these kind of things that came during that time, America had those Enlightenment ideals, but they used it with biblical truth, and you got your rights from God. And the only way that you could have this country with this moral foundation is through God and through religion. Whereas the French, they abandoned the church during their revolution, and that's why they had all these different constitutions and all the beheadings and all of that. It was not a pretty sight to see. So I think America handled the Enlightenment era much better than a country like France did. Anyway, one of the other chapters that I was really very happy about was this other chapter kind of near the end called Becoming a Hero in a Dangerous World, where I talk about how people can see evil happening around them. They can see all of the mediocrity, the laziness happening around them, and they can turn themselves into someone who is a hero. I use the ideals. I'm a massive Lord of the Rings fan. It's my favorite thing in the world, the books, the movies, and I use the example of Aragorn as someone who people can strive to be like, because it's kind of the difference between, like, you have this beta male type that you see everywhere who's letting women walk all over him and doesn't really have any passions or motivations and kind of just does what everyone else does. And then you kind of have this alpha male Chad type who is, this hulking man who says women ain't nothing and this type of mentality. And I think both are wrong. And these are the things, this is like how we've been pitting them against each other, these two sides of this manliness coin. Or this masculinity coin, when in reality what people should be looking towards is more of a chivalrous mindset, where you build yourself as someone who is strong and knowledgeable and courageous, and yet you are not rubbing that in the faces of those who are not. You are using that information and that strength to help others who are less fortunate than you. That is what becoming a hero is. And it is sacrificing things in your life that other people do not want to lose because they're not that type of hero person, and you are sacrificing things in your life so that you can be that, as Nietzsche would call it, the Ubermensch. This 1% of people who is doing something brave and miraculous and extraordinary, and what I go into the book is like, being a Republican is not that 1%. You are not a hero because you side with a political ideology. You are a hero when you stand against the crowd and do something that is completely different and introspective from what everyone else is doing. And there is great room in a time when we are facing this moral crisis, when we are facing this crisis of meaning, for people to step up and be these types of heroes. And so I talk about this heroic journey and how people can really adapt their lives into being someone who takes on the dragons of the world, as I say, and battle it and come out the other side all the wiser, even if it's a scary concept. And in terms of, concrete chapters talking about things that are a little bit easier to grasp but aren't so metaphysical, I have my chapter on America's financial institutions in the book, where I go over the Federal Reserve, I go over BlackRock and the World Economic Forum, and I go over self-sustainability and how people can actually break free from these big institutions. I don't see any sort of government policy happening anytime soon of fixing this corporate public partnerships that we have. And so I think it's a lot about people taking, again, that own personal responsibility and doing something themselves to make their lives more sufficient.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I've definitely noticed, I've been following you for a while, and I've definitely noticed that a lot of your content has become less like reactionary and more thought-based. And I think that's kind of what's needed. We get a lot of people who say, like you were saying, right? There's kind of the contrast of the, like, women ain't nothing, or like these kind of like, well, simps, for a better word, or lack of a better word. And, we kind of need someone that's like kind of in there and is thoughtful and is actually reacting positively. Like I think Jordan Peterson's a good example, right? It's someone who's sitting there and is actually thinking about it, where someone like, you might get like an Andrew Tate that would be more reactionary, right? So I think there's definitely been a change in like the way you've presented yourself to the public. And I think it's been pretty good too. So I've liked watching that journey for you.
Well, thank you, man. I appreciate that a lot. It's something that, going back to the original question about, how my faith inspired me, at the end of the day, it's like people are looking, especially a lot of people in the political movements, whether on the left or the right, are looking for the approval of other people. And that sort of approval will not end up making you happy in the end. And I found that out the hard way after I was looking for this approval for years and years from all these different people, and finding that I could never really get that approval in the way that I wanted to. Not everyone's going to like you. And then once you actually say something that is really true and bold, you'll find that the people who you thought liked you don't like you anymore, because you're no longer serving within their confined mental space. So it means a lot that you say that, truly. And I think the more people need to be brave enough to stand against these powers that be that are telling you that you can't say these certain things, you can't do this, you don't have to live this mediocre life like everyone else. You can do something incredible.
Yeah, there's definitely like a trend, I think, even in the conservative, which, we're all conservatives here, but even in the conservative community, where it's like they're saying things that, you can't say, but you can say it to your audience, right? You can say it to conservatives. So, you're saying safe things, right? Maybe not to the left, but to your conservative-based audience. And it definitely takes a lot of character to stand there and say something that might rub people the wrong way, but is still based in truth, is still based in reality, still based in God. So I think, like I said, I think that's great.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, looking at the conservative movement and the media around it and the influencer movement and all of these kind of things that, again, I've been a part of for a long time. So I'm not blaming anyone for any of these kind of things, because I've been a part of it as well. So I understand. But, it's like the idea of saving children from this sexualization of the left is a noble cause indeed, right? But what you get is not necessarily the saving of children from many of the people on the right in this conservative movement. You get people who are reacting to the content or the videos or the articles that the left is putting out about it, and they are using it as a means to propel their own voice for their own sort of vanity, their own sort of arrogance, right? So instead of doing something about the things that we're seeing or trying to fix themselves or the local communities, they are posting something as a reaction to what they're seeing and then immediately looking for the next thing to react to. It's like quote tweeting some video of some kid being sexualized by one of these leftists and saying like, this is disgusting. And it's like, yeah, it is disgusting, but like, what has that done? You are not posting it for the sake of that child. You are posting it for the sake of yourself. And that is what politics has turned into. Politics is a business. That is really what it comes down to. It is people making money. It is people making fame for themselves. And I hate to sound so cynical, but I've been in this for a long time, and I see how a lot of these people work. And I know from personal experience, because this is what I've done for a long time. And I just think that there's so much room for this movement to grow. And I don't take like we have so many people now who come on and say they're conservative, and so many young people and people getting involved in this, but I don't look at that at the same way of saying that's a good thing if the amount of people who are doing this is just for reaction's sake. For sure. Like I talked to one of this funny story of someone who used to work at PragerU with me, and he would say, I asked my kids why they're conservative. His kids are 13, and he said, "Why are you conservative?" And they said, "Low taxes." And it's like, you're a 13-year-old kid. What does low taxes have anything to do with your life? It's like there has to be a deeper thought about the things that we're really pushing for and understanding why they actually serve our lives in a way.
You're absolutely right. Yeah. I'm kind of curious because you have gone through a lot of changes recently in the past couple of years, converting to Christianity, moving to Florida, starting the Florida Standard, things like that. I'm wondering how maybe what are some ways that you've been kind of dealing with those changes, and what are some unexpected outcomes of those changes, or some challenges that you've experienced that maybe you didn't expect to experience before jumping into all this?
I guess it's kind of breaking free from a lot of the stuff that I was into before. Like years ago, I was going to all the conferences, I was talking to all the other influencers, I was making that kind of content. And then I would say that now, I'm running a newspaper. It's a political based newspaper. So there's not much media content side on the video space and the viral kind of space like that. So it's definitely a change of content that I'm putting out, and something that I have had to get used to, versus like, and something came out and I'm finding aggregate on it and making a video reacting to what this thing is. It's like, okay, now I'm in control of creating the content by speaking with sources here in Florida or wherever, if it's a national story, and creating something through my journalist to make something that is all the full information about something. So that's definitely been a big change, but I've actually really liked it. It's quite fun to be able to find your own stories and create them how you want to create them, and make sure that all the information that is relevant to whatever it is going on, you can put in there, and you have then control of the conversation. It's no longer someone else has control and you're just saying what you think about it. It is you have the control by being the person who puts out the first narrative on it. So I've really enjoyed that, but it's been a struggle to, I guess, kind of move aside and make something different, but it's been a lot of fun.
Are you the sole writer over there, or do y'all have other people writing for Florida Standard?
Yes, I have a team of journalists. So there's myself, and then I have 3 journalists as well who work with me over there, all dispersed around Florida. Yeah,
well, that's good. I mean, then y'all work real closely together, I'm sure, if it's only 3, and everything that goes through you. So I'm sure it's filtered.
Definitely, yeah. So as the editor-in-chief, I'm going through all the stories, editing them for content, as well as grammatical errors and things like that, and handling things on the business side as well.
And I was wondering, too, like, why Florida? Exactly. Was it just seeing a need there, or why did you decide to start the Florida Standard?
Well, I wanted to get out of California for sure. And definitely I'm a big fan of the idea of balkanization, basically getting away from evil people and getting in touch with good people and good communities. I think that that's a fantastic idea. I'm not even so opposed to a national divorce when you look at what states like California are doing. So I wanted to get out to Florida because, as Dennis Prager would say, America is the last best hope for the world. And then I say that Florida is the last best hope for America. And so what I think is happening in this state with the politics here, with the culture here, with all the people moving here, is it is becoming really the conservative bastion of America, more so than Texas, more so than Nevada, Arizona, any of these places. It really is the place for freedom and conservative values. And I think really good people. All the people who I've met, especially here in Tampa, just the nicest people. The people in Tallahassee who I'm in contact with are just fantastic people. It's not the same sort of bureaucracy that you see happening in Washington. It seems to work much more efficiently. And I wanted to come here to really represent fairly what's going on, because if you read the other big publications in the state of Florida, the Miami Herald, the Orlando Sentinel, you would think Florida is a Democrat state, just based on the biggest news outlets, Tampa Bay Times, for example. So I wanted to come here and show what was actually fairly going on with the governor, with the politics, and with the culture of the state, why people are moving here in the first place.
I was going to ask you about that. Florida's always been kind of a swing state. Do you think it's officially flipped red?
Oh, easily. I mean, Ron DeSantis won by 19 percentage points, 1.5 million votes in this last election against Charlie Crist. Granted, Charlie Crist wasn't the best candidate,
Sure.
But it was a race that none of us had any worries about. I can say that safely on election night. None of us were sitting there thinking like, "Oh, how's this going to go? What's going to happen?"
Yeah,
we
for sure.
We already knew. We already knew because the Florida blueprint is just so strong, and people are moving here by the thousands. We had no doubts about it. So yeah, Florida is definitely a red state, and it's not even just a red state. It's a conservative state. You talk to the people here, and they're from all over America, and you say, "Oh, I'm glad you moved to Florida," and they say, "Yeah, we just love the governor, or we just love the freedom here. We love the no vax mandates that it was a couple of years ago, when that stuff was going on." So it's just a completely different world from California. I can't tell you how happy I am to be here. Yeah, we're definitely
I've heard a lot of
people. State now.
I've heard a lot of people say that it's not a red state, it's a DeSantis state, and as soon as he's gone, it's going back to a swing. So I was curious what you thought about that.
No, I don't think so. I think the influx of voters that have come in here. I mean, just yesterday, Ron DeSantis tweeted about how Florida now has 400,000 more registered Republicans. On election night, there were 300,000 more registered Republicans in the state. That's 100,000 more in just a few short months. It's insane. And so that influx of people, even if DeSantis goes, those people aren't just going to leave and leave. Yeah. And with the amount of people that we have in Florida, within the Florida government and up in Tallahassee, Ron DeSantis is not the only one doing good work. Excuse me. He's obviously the one who's getting a lot of the credit. He's the face. He's the big guy on campus doing a lot of things and putting his name out there. But, there are people behind the scenes who are fantastic people in that administration and just in the government in general, like Paul Renner, the Speaker of the House. He's a state house. He's fantastic. He's a great guy, and all these other people behind the scenes are just great people who are really ideological. That's something that I found in Florida that is really different than any of the other political places I've been to. The people here are ideological. They're not putting the money and business first. They really care. I woke up this morning, and for some reason in my head, I was thinking about this exact thing about like, wow, like Florida's actually, the people here are actually good people, So I was pleasantly surprised by that thought when I woke up. And I don't think that the state is going to fail if Ron DeSantis, becomes president or is done with politics, whatever it is. I think the state has a lot of good things in the future for it.
That's great. You think he's going to run?
It's shaping up to look that way. I can't say for certain, but it's looking like that is probably going to happen. With Trump's latest jab about this groomer comments and all these kind of things, it's very strange of him to do so. I think that Trump is losing a lot of steam with a lot of people. For me, he lost it because of the vaccine stuff, but I think that a lot of people are also just ready for a new face, and whether that face is DeSantis or just someone else, I think people are kind of, from what I can gather, going on social media, it seems that that's the case, and talking to people here in Florida.
Well, I know
maybe
here in Texas,
Florida bias.
Well, here in Texas, I know I was talking to a lot of people, and people, even with after all the vax stuff, when Trump went after DeSantis with that DeSanctimonious jab or whatever he did, that immediately rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, because it's like, well, why are you going after him? Like, of all the people to go after. And I think that was kind of like I don't know, it was an unnecessary jab, and I don't think it did him any favors. And I think it showed a lot of the support that people had for DeSantis over Trump.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, it kind of made him look very foolish, I think. And I think it made him look very immature in that sense, especially, a lot of people came, and when I made a video about this, and they said, well, this is politics. You're welcome to the game. People get called out all the time and all this. But the thing that I think is surprising about it is that Ron DeSantis hadn't announced that he was running for president. There was no announcement for president or anything in that state. Ron DeSantis was just working in Florida, doing his thing, trying to make life for Floridians better. And Trump came after him in a very, what I thought, out of the blue sense that didn't really line up. And so I get it that if it's like a political campaign and you two are running against each other, look at the jabs that Obama and Hillary Clinton were throwing at each other back in 2012, and then he appoints her. So obviously this stuff is crazy, but there was no running from DeSantis, so it just seemed definitely out of the blue, and I don't think a lot of people really enjoyed it. I know there are people who did enjoy it, but for me personally, it wasn't my taste.
Yeah, for sure. Well, there's those people who are like, you know, they talk about the never Trumpers. There's the people who are like always Trumpers that like, regardless of what's said, they're going to like fangirl over it. So it's not surprising.
No.
Yeah,
And for me, you know, I was someone who, I've been very into Trump. For Trump is the one who got me into politics. Thank Trump for every single thing that he did in this country. Amazing. I mean, I was going to the Stop the Steal rallies and speaking at these things about voter fraud and getting people to donate to the Legal Action Fund against the voters, all this kind of stuff. But, you know, it comes to a point where you have to understand that there are mistakes that people can make. You know,
For sure.
No one is infallible. Not Trump, not DeSantis, not me, not anyone.
Yeah, best president in my lifetime. I'll say that, you know, over and over again.
Yeah, of course. But it's a different time now.
You're absolutely right. Yeah, I just wanted to say, because we are kind of running up there on time, and I wanted to get this question in before, you know, we ran out of it. What are some things you think that we can do both for ourselves and for other people just to kind of course correct the direction that this country's heading in? Because you hear a lot of people, they do the Twitter activism, but I don't know if that's really going to be doing much. Or like you mentioned earlier, retweeting the kid who, you know, mistreated sexually, and they're like, oh, this is terrible. Well, that's not really doing a whole lot. So what are some things that we can do actively to maybe help make things right again?
I'll say this. In World War II, there was this German battalion, police battalion of soldiers, and they went and they were ordered to genocide many Jews and many people throughout Poland and other places throughout Europe. And there was only about a dozen of these men who said they refused to take part in these killings. Most of them did it reluctantly. They still did the killings, but did it reluctantly. And then you had about 15% of them who relished going to do in these killings. So what I'm saying by this is that you had this small amount of people who went and did something very brave, standing up to the Nazis and saying, I'm not going to go and kill all these people. I refuse to do it. And that is what you have to do to make a better country. You have to be that individual who stands against what everyone else is doing, even if people don't like you for it. Even if these people got in trouble by the SS or the Nazis higher in command, and they got in trouble for it, they did it anyway because they knew that it was right. You know, you have to be that person who puts right before anything else, puts truth and God before anything else, because you can't fix any of these problems if we are working on the basis of political solutions. If you have evil people and you are trying to fix evil through evil means or through selfish or vain means, you're not going to fix anything. You have to be the individuals that this country needs, or at least even, you know, not even thinking about this country. You know, it's not like you or me is going to be going to Washington and fixing the bureaucracy in the swamp there right now. It's just not going to happen, right? Or big tech censorship tomorrow. It's just not going to happen. What you have to do is be that individual who is that brave person who can build your community, who can build your family, and build yourself as a true hero and a true warrior. I know that is not some concrete solution of like what someone should be like. How do you fix Joe Biden? You know, how do you fix the Democratic Party or Washington? But it's the most important question. It's the most important question because there's so much that individuals can do, but people are afraid to be individuals because they're afraid of what other people are going to think about them. They're so tied into being a part of some group, whether it's political or socially or sexually or culturally, whatever it is, that they miss the bigger picture of what they actually should be focusing on to make good people in a country. They can't control us if we are good people. They can control your body, they can control your job, they can do all these kind of things, but they can't control your spirit if you are living as this individual and a good person. I think people need to focus on that above all else.
Absolutely. That's great. Will, I know you got to get out of here, but I want to say thank you again for coming on. This was awesome.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it a lot, guys.